Hello, my Italian food fanatics. Today we're going to make a special omelet, an omelette margherita, kind of like pizza margherita. In fact, it's going to contain all of the elements that a pizza margherita contains. We're going to use the eggs as a dough or as the base of the pizza. We'll have our oven-dried tomatoes. We'll have basil, of course. Mozzarella. I'm going to use full fat mozzarella, but it's not the fresh. It's the dried because it melts better, and you'll see why we need to do that because it's an omelet. It's too wet otherwise. And that's why I used oven-dried tomatoes as well as opposed to fresh tomatoes because we don't want that problem either. And of course, some parmigiano-reggiano, a little bit of salt, and that's it. That's essentially what a margherita pizza is. And instead of using butter, we're going to use 100% California olive oil to make the omelet. So, without any further ado, let's get into the kitchen so I can show you how this is done. But before I do, please, thumbs up, like, subscribe, share, and leave a comment below. Tell me what you think at the end of the deal. Whether you like the omelet or not, or you have suggestions or what have you. It's something a little bit different, all right? But it sticks to the same contours. Now, we could have used pecorino romano, but Parmesan is just as valid in this instance. So, like, subscribe, leave a comment, share, thumbs up, ring the bell, because I release a video literally every day of the week. So, without further ado, let's get in the kitchen and I'll show you how to make this thing. It's phenomenal. You're going to love it. Hello, my Italian food fanatics. So here we go. We're going to make our preparations for our margherita omelet. The first thing that we need to do is to make some tomatoes. We're going to take these and we're going to put them in the oven for a few hours in order for them to concentrate their flavors. What we want is kind of like a fresh sun-dried tomato. So I've got these Campari tomatoes. I've washed them, then I've dried them off, and we're going to lay them in a sheet pan, and we're going to put them in an oven for 4 to 5 hours, maybe even longer, depending, at about 190 degrees Fahrenheit. I don't know what that is in centigrade. You can figure it all out. But we'll put these here. Now, a lot of people want to take the center out, where the seeds are and the liquid. This is the wrong approach, in my opinion, and I'll tell you the reason why. Number one, all of the flavor of the tomato, the best flavor of the tomato, is on the inside. Most people would never think that, but Ferran Adria, the 3 Michelin star chef and one of the greatest chefs in the history of the culinary arts, used to serve the tomatoes insides and discard the outside. Believe it or not. Seems counterintuitive again, but when you taste the individual elements of the tomato in its most ripe state, you will find that the seeds and the center pulp is the best part of the actual tomato. And so for that reason, even though to concentrate their flavors, it's going to take us longer to do that, I'm going to leave the centers in for that reason, so that the liquid or the moisture can evaporate. It's going to take longer to do that, but the end product will be absolutely superior. All right, so let's put these on a sheet tray, and I'll be right back. All right, my Italian food fanatics, we have our halved Campari or cherry tomatoes. They're actually larger than cherry tomatoes on the sheet pan. And now I'm going to add a little bit of salt to them. So what does salt do? It draws out the moisture and it's going to intensify the flavor. Not a lot of salt, but a little bit. And then we're also going to drizzle a little bit of 100% California extra virgin olive oil on each one of these. And that is essentially, there's the oven, it's ready, now it's at 190 degrees. And what this will do, it's another component of the margherita. So it will add flavor, And about halfway in the cooking, I'm going to add a little bit of basil. And I will come back and do that. But these now go in the oven at 190 degrees for the next 5 or 6 hours. We'll come back when we're going to add the basil. All right, my Italian food fanatics, it's been 8 hours that these tomatoes have been in the oven. I put them in at 190 degrees, and I did it for, like I said, 8 hours. But what I also did was I left the door ajar a little bit. And what I'm going to do is, as these cool down, I'm going to place a little bit of basil, some fresh basil, on each one of these tomatoes. And the reason why I didn't cook them with this is because it will just end up shriveling the basil, and the goodness of the oils and the compounds that give basil its beautiful flavor and aroma would have been lost. But what I think happens better than anything here is that when the tomatoes cool down with a little bit of basil on top of them, that essence of the basil will go into the tomato and give it a little bit of that basil perfume. We don't want too much. We just want a little bit. And so now we'll let them cool down. I'll put them in the refrigerator, and then tomorrow we will make our eggs margherita. Anyway, more tomorrow, but you know what I've done. All I'm going to do now is let them cool down to room temperature and then put them in the refrigerator. We'll see you in a little while. All right, my Italian food fanatics, let's make this margherita omelet. So now, in a margherita pizza, we have, of course, the dough, or the base, and that's what the eggs are going to be today. We also have a tomato, or tomato product, and I'm going to use these dried tomatoes that we made. In fact, you saw the video a little bit earlier of how we made these. So there's some olive oil on here, so that will represent the olive oil. Now, we're also going to use some Parmigiano, which is legit on, and you could also use Romano. We're going to use, of course, mozzarella, except I'm going to use a whole milk, but a drier mozzarella, not the fresh mozzarella. And of course, we have a little bit more basil. All right? And so these are our ingredients. First, we're going to chop up the basil, and we're going to add it to the eggs. And then we're going to grate everything else, and we'll head over to the stove to make the omelet. All right, first things first. If you know me, you know that I like to crack the eggs in one bowl and then transfer them to the other bowl. In case there's an issue, we're not going to contaminate our other eggs with a bad egg. So we crack the egg in there. We notice there's no issues or problems, and so we add it into the bowl that we're going to finally mix up our eggs in. If we get any shells or anything in that, we can deal with that at that time as well, rather than trying to fish in and get the eggs and get shell out of a larger group. There we go. These are all organic eggs anyway. They're large, free range. Now, one thing that can be said here is that the shell color has no bearing on anything other than the breed of the chicken, but the yolks of the eggs do tell us what the animal has been fed. All right? So the color of the yolks can be manipulated by the feed. And we're just going to scramble these up. Now, there's a reason why I've done this first, is because then we're going to add in our chopped basil. I don't want to add the chopped basil in with this, because this beating of it I don't want it to wreck the basil. Now that may seem ridiculous because we're going to chop the basil and then we're going to make the omelet a little bit later on. But the less of it that we can do, the better. All right? So we're always thinking about how we can mitigate any sort of damage to the products that we're going to eat. And leave them as fresh and as whole as possible. So this is good for right now. Give me 1 second to get this area cleaned up, and we'll come back and chop our basil and add it in. All right, my Italian food fanatics, we're back. We have some basil. I'm just going to take the far ends of these stems off. I'm going to put them on top of one another just like this. Give them a little roll. And we're going to make chiffonade, little ribbons. Like this, and then we'll be able to give them a 45-degree turn and give them another cut in like this, and that's it. We don't want to do anything more to them. And we'll take the bowl of our eggs and put that in there. And we'll give it a final mix before it's about to go in, just to incorporate them well. But we don't want to damage the basil, okay? We want to keep it as pristine as possible up until the last second before we cook it, all right? Now we'll get to our shredding of our mozzarella. And actually, I'm going to slice the mozzarella. I'll do it for you right now. Give it a couple of slices here. That's going to be, a couple of slices are going to be more than enough to actually be in our omelet. So you don't need a grater or anything like that. You can do this just by hand. Like this as well. And we'll give it another chop this way. All right. They probably will not end up using all of this. That's a lot of cheese. Doesn't seem like a lot before it's chopped up like that, but it is. All right. And we can even mix it in here with some of the basil that's left on the board. And believe it or not, that's going to be just fine. It's perfect this way. All right, seems sloppy, but because we're going to use this for the omelet, why not have a little bit of that basil in there? Okay, so we'll be back. All right, my Italian food fanatics, I'm also going to put our oven-dried tomatoes on a small plate here. I'm going to use about 4 of them in the omelet. Let me tell you, I've tried these. It doesn't get better than that. You have to try to do this yourself. They're absolutely delicious. Concentrated flavor. It's kind of like having the best version of a sun-dried tomato that you can have with all the flavors concentrated. All right, it looks like we're ready to go to the stove. Let's go. All right, my Italian food fanatics, we are at the stove. What I'm going to do, turn up my heat to high, and because this is a margarita, I'm going to use extra virgin olive oil as opposed to butter. This will make it truly Italian and just absolutely soigné. It is 100% California extra virgin olive oil because I live in Southern California, and I believe in using products from your region or area, and whenever possible. For example, this parmigiano-reggiano that I'm using, there's no other substitute for it in the entire world. There's no way I can find something that's even comes close to that in America, unfortunately. But that's the reality of the situation. So that's what we'll use. If we can't find something better, for example, Parma ham, nothing has been able to come near Parma ham. You just cannot touch it, all right? Same thing with mortadella. Same thing with pecorino romano that's made in Sardinia. These are some of the best products in the world that cannot be or have not yet been improved upon. And so that's the reason why we're using. But the California olive oil, I mean, that you just doesn't get better than that. California tomatoes, beautiful. In fact, that's what we're using. But those oven-dried tomatoes are California, 100% organic. So here we are. We're up to heat. Going to add a little bit of olive oil in there. All right. And right before we go in, we're going to add some salt into our eggs. Not too much, because the cheese and everything else is also going to be salty. We'll give this a final beating and add it into our pan. All right. Now, as you well know, if you've watched my video on making a classic omelet, you'll know how we roll. This moves back and forth, this moves in a circular motion like this, and we occasionally clean the sides. Okay, it's very easy, but it's complicated. It's simple, but it's not simplistic. Let's put it that way. Egg cookery is not difficult, but it's one of the more difficult ones. All right, so we're almost done here. I'm going to turn off the heat, and then we're going to spread the egg around and remove it from the sides this way. Okay, now for some people, that may be a little bit too runny, all right? But for me, it's not. We're now going to grate some parmigiano-reggiano onto the eggs. Again, you can cook it a lot further if you like, all right? You don't have to cook it to the same temperature that I'm talking about here. We're going to add in our mozzarella cheese. In fact, believe it or not, I thought that was going to be too much, but we ended up using all of it. All right. And finally, we'll add in on one side our tomatoes. Okay, so there we go. I'm going to remove this. And then we'll plate the omelet. In fact, what I should do for you is to show you here how we're going to do this. I take this and move this over like this. I'm going to hide that in there a little bit. We take the plate and we invert the pan onto the plate. And bingo, we have our omelet. Now, you can manipulate it any which way you want, but you can see that it's perfectly cooked. There's no coloring at all, and it is a beautiful thing. How sweet it is. Hello, my Italian food fanatics. Well, we're back. And this is where the rubber meets the road. You saw me put it together. You saw it all happen. You saw me make the tomatoes. It took, I think, 8 hours. I forget exactly because it was last night. It took over 8 hours actually to make those oven-dried tomatoes, but they are absolutely phenomenal. Now you know how to make better quality than quote-unquote sun-dried tomatoes that you would buy in the store. Yes, it takes time. Yes, it takes a little bit of energy, but really about 8 hours in the oven at 190 degrees with the door slightly ajar, and you never touch it after that for the most part. My mouth is watering because I know what's coming. This is going to be so fantastic. Oh, and the cheese. Let's see. Let's see if this is going to be any good. I'll get at least one of these sun-dried tomatoes or oven-dried tomatoes in there. Wow. That is so good. I'm telling you, if you served this to an Italian friend of yours, they would have to give you props. They would have to give you props on coming up with something that's very, very interesting. Wow. The tomatoes there, the basil. You saw how we treated the basil so that it wouldn't get damaged or wrecked. It's the flavor is totally there. There's a creaminess with the cheese. There's not too much salt. My mouth is watering still. Oh, man. That's good. If anything, if you like sun-dried tomatoes, try the method that I showed you, and you're going to be beyond happy. Look. Oh, wow. Such intense tomato flavor, but in a good way, right? When you have great produce, you don't have to, just concentrating the flavors is so good. No color on the egg, just the way I like it. You can put color on it. You can cook it a lot further. It's creamy. It's delicious. It's one of those things. It's a little bit different. That's the American Italian way. We take something, we use a little bit of creativity, which we are the world's best at, and we create something that's a little bit off the beaten path, something that is soigné, something that could be classical, something extraordinary. And you, my friends, my Italian food fanatics, you are the beneficiaries of this. So, this one takes a little bit of time to do, but it's one of my iterations. It's one of my variations on an omelette margherita. Go out, do it, learn how to make these oven-dried tomatoes, and you'll never look at oven-dried or sun-dried tomatoes again. This will be your number one. There's no doubt about it. Thanks for your time and attention. Give me a thumbs up, subscribe, like, share, do all the things that you need to do to help me out. That is, if you got value out of this. If you don't like me, you don't have to subscribe. You don't have to do that. You don't even have to leave a comment, right? But if you enjoyed it, please leave me a comment, all right? If there's any way I can help you with your cooking, let me know, and I will do my very best to try to accommodate you. Have a nice day. Thank you so much.